Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the 1867 Sports Show, brand new podcast here on the Dine Sports Podcast Network.
Oh, boy.
Some familiar voices, though, as you can hear. Bigger Kyle currently battling a bit of a cold there, but...
No, I'm not. No, this is my new podcast voice. I told you we've shifted our focus over to 1867. I got to come fresh with a new look, new voice, new everything. It's a new year, 2024. This is me now. This is me.
Yeah, well, I'm just happy you're here because, frankly, you know, I saw some reports of guys streaking down the road after Michigan won the national championship last night. I didn't know if you're going to show up like David Putty style there with the face paint, maybe shirtless with a big M on your chest there. Just carving out some time.
You want an answer? You talk to the 8-ball.
Let's go Devils! Devils!
Oh man, but you know what? This is so fantastic. But again, before we get into any intros and kind of introducing what we're actually doing and talking about, you didn't think I was going to come unprepared.
Oh, you've got props. He's a props comedian now.
But I gotta just show love for the blue and the maize, and just say, you know what? It's been a long time coming. 27 years, but the boys did it. The boys did it last night. Michigan are the national champions, and it's been a good start to 2024.
There you go. Your 2024 is off and flying there. So we'll carve out that little piece of time for you to talk American sports, but that's not what the show is about, right?
No, it is not.
We're gonna get that caveat out of the way. You've done your victory lap, Big Blue, national champions, but for those who haven't pieced it together already, 1867 Sports Show, we're going to be focusing on all the amazing things going on in Canadian sports, whether it's a Canadian sports franchise taking part in MLB, NBA, NHL, whatever. We've got U Sports going on. We've got tons of just great Canadian athletes doing amazing things all the time as well, too. They don't tend to get the same amount of shine as our south of the border compatriots do, to say the least.
This is why we are doing this, so that way everyone that rocks the Canadian logo can absolutely get recognized and get shown some love by some form of media.
Some way, shape, and or form there. So.
And all of the 3 listeners that we'll have on this will be right up to date on all the Canadian things.
Well, let me tell you, by the time we get to episode 2 and we're up to 5 listeners, then we'll really be on to something there.
Hey, cool. If we start out with that model where you double every week, and it's like saving a penny, right? Save a penny and double it every day. At the end of the month, you'll have like $3 million.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, by December 31st, 2024, we'll crack 100 listeners.
You know what? It's a grind, Kyle. It's a grind, okay?
There you go. Just like our Canadian athletes are up against. But
look at that.
There, perfect tie. And yeah. So 2023, a lot went down, and we kind of went back and forth. How do we want to start the year, right? New year, new beginnings. We could have started off with a prediction show. We kind of thought about it, and then we went, we'll be given enough predictions in future episodes. We don't need to dedicate a full episode to it. So off the hop, 2023, we're kind of doing a year in review a little bit here. Some of the things have bled into January 2024 here that we'll touch on, but by and large, wanted to highlight some of the really big happenings in Canadian sport that have taken place over the last 365 days.
Yeah, I mean, perfect start to this show because we get to highlight one of the best athletes that's ever graced their respective sports in this country. They just hung up the cleats. Of course, I'm referring to the GOAT of Canadian soccer and women's soccer, for that matter, Christine Sinclair. So, first of all, let's get a nice little golf clap going for Miss Sinclair. I mean, what an amazing career she had put together. 3-time Olympic medalist, 1-time gold medalist. I mean, countless amounts of awards overseas, scoring champion. She leads all of soccer in regards to goals scored, men's and women's. So, I mean, you look at what she did, and she's really kind of put Canadian women's soccer back on the map. You know what I mean? So the fact that she was able to kind of go out on her own terms, she walked away from it, holding her head high. She was still playing at a decent level. So it's not like her skills were eroding away right before our eyes. this woman deserves all the flowers imaginable for the amazing job that she's done, kind of putting this sport on her back and carrying it into a great future with where she's left it.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it too, right? Is let's call it what it is. Canada does not take soccer nearly as seriously as our European compatriots and those in, South America and whatnot. So really our exposure to soccer by and large is whenever a World Cup rolls around, an Olympic series, anything like that. So her career, even though she's 40 and has been playing on national teams literally since a teenager here, like
Mhm.
she kind of just pops into our life periodically. But for those
Yeah.
that actually follow the sport, like this is literally the equivalent of Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, like someone at the absolute peak of their powers who has, rewritten record books
Yeah.
countless times here, retiring, right? And
Yeah.
so it's probably even though, there was a lot of fanfare that went into it, and, they renamed BC Place Christine St. Clair Place for her final match. And, it was the largest attended friendly in women's Canadian soccer history.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of fanfare around the finale there, but it wasn't like, as you say, Wayne Gretzky's final season where he's getting a memento at center ice every single
Yeah.
game he's going to. And, not that it's a missed opportunity here, but it is worth highlighting, the amazing career that this woman
Yeah.
has had, because, it's not just women's soccer, it's just soccer in general.
In
Everyone always
general.
talks
Yeah.
about, Cristiano Ronaldo, oh, all-time international leading scorer, 128 goals. No, my friend. 190 for Miss Sinclair there. So like you can almost combine Lionel Messi's and Ronaldo's international goal scoring total, and Christine Sinclair has almost surpassed those two combined. So
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
even comparing apples to apples here. Like she is that far ahead of every other person who's played the sport.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the ultimate sign of respect that she's got in her sport is the fact that her biggest rival,
Yeah.
the Americans, they were the ones saying, hey, what she's done is incredible. What she's done will not be seen for a long time because it was unprecedented
Mhm.
what she was doing. So, I mean, the fact that your rival's giving you the big props that they are giving you, I mean, that just shows the level of respect that she's garnered, right? So, yeah, I mean, like I said, and you've touched on this on the topic too. From an international perspective, untouched.
Yeah.
From a domestic level, I mean, you look at what she's done both collegiately and professionally. She's also put together a hell of a career. So I mean, yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to see someone like this for a long time kind of put a sport on their respective backs, like she has in this country. I mean, we talked on the Giants press box, a while ago, and we were talking about the impact of Serena Williams and what she did with tennis, right? I put that on the same level for soccer in this country with Christine Sinclair.
Yeah.
Think about all the registrations that have gone up since she's kind of taken center stage, right?
Yeah.
She's such a good role model that everybody wants their kids to emulate. So I mean, again, we can't give enough props on it, and I think we'll leave it at that. But I mean, unbelievable that we could start off our show, the inaugural episode, talking about potentially one of the greatest careers ever by somebody in their sport.
Yeah. Well, and just to put a bow on that as well, too, right? Like we're starting to finally see a lot of the women's professional leagues and international women's teams and that starting to get their shine. They're getting a little bit more media coverage and whatnot. But let's put this in perspective here, right? By and large, women's sports are trying to emulate a lot of the things that the men's sports have done well and what they've succeeded at and incorporate it into them. I would argue it's actually the exact opposite what happened here in Canada with regards to soccer, where, neither the men's nor women's teams were exactly international powerhouses until Christine St. Clair came along here, put the team on her back. And now all of a sudden, 3 Olympic medals, they're making all sorts of World Cup appearances, all of that, to the point where the men's team is doing the opposite. They're actually copying what the women's team was doing and putting into place and adopting their training techniques and their coaches. And, so very rarely have we seen sort of that inverse sports effect happen But I think that compared coupled with the fact that I don't think Megan Rapinoe is everyone's cup of tea. She's got some opinions on a few things there, but the one thing she got absolutely right was she went out of her way to throw every compliment, imaginable at Christine Sinclair. So hats off to Captain Canada right there.
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, soccer's never been in a more healthy place in this country, and I think that you being the father of two beautiful young girls, me being the father of two beautiful young girls, it gives them someone to look up to, other than the traditional. Well, we're watching LeBron James, we're watching Sidney Crosby. It gives them somebody that they can say, hey, she looks like I do, right? I can do the same things that she can do if I push myself hard enough. So again, fantastic that we can start that off and kind of go from there. But yeah, I mean, throwing it over to anything else that's going on. What do you think we should be focusing on for the next little tidbit that we want to share with everybody?
Well, we've got a laundry list of things to choose from, but we might as well just piggyback right on sort of that women's sports movement there, because for anyone who's a hockey fan or lives in one of the 6 major cities, little something has finally come to fruition. And the PWHL first game happened on January 1st. And it was a pretty dark day for the No One Watches Women's Sports crowd there. 2.9 million viewers on the inaugural game. And look at any of the team's websites right now. Their merch is sold out. Their game day commemorative pucks are sold out. Season tickets are through the roof. It's standing room only tickets. They just had to release new blocks of tickets, where anyone who's been to TD Place here in Ottawa knows that there's sections that they've got tarps on because the roof is caving in on the place. And so they're actually opening up additional sections that I don't think a butt has been in probably like 5 years, because the demand for tickets is so high. So, PWHL is going to be something that not only hockey fans are going to be talking about, but sports fans in general, because they're well backed. They're finally under one banner, which has been the biggest problem for women's hockey for the longest time, whether it was the Dream Gap Tour or the old Provincial Women's Hockey League, which also had PWHL as their acronyms. And you had all these sort of rival factions, with PHF getting all the talent finally under one roof in a best on best league. Huge for the sport.
This is honestly reminding me of, then again, like, we weren't alive during the time, but when the ABA and the NBA finally decided to merge, and how much it blew up the sport of basketball. Everybody was trying to cannibalize off of the other, and that's what really made it a terrible situation. I mean, there was more teams than ever, but how competitive were they? How good were they? How profitable were they?
Well, like Jackie Moon and the Flint Tropics there, sneaking in.
I mean, we'll segue to talk about that movie for a second. How is that not a team that was made in real life after that movie was done? Like, Flint, you had an opportunity to rename the Flint Firebirds the Flint Tropics, and have the first hockey team to have a palm tree on their logo.
Oh, Florida Panthers have had the shoulder.
No,
it's a palm tree and a hockey stick.
It does not count.
Okay.
No,
all right.
Unless it's on the actual crest, it does not count.
All right. You're being a stickler here. New year, and you're reading the fine print. You're reading your iTunes agreements there. All of a sudden,
listen. I have enough arguments with people about what to call certain jerseys, uniforms, everything. Let's just take it away and say, whatever is on the crest, that's what the logo is. Not these secondary, things on the shoulders, nothing on the back, nothing on the helmets. It's whatever's on the crest.
Back in my day, there were only 6 teams that you needed to follow.
And that Wayne Gretzky, he was 7 feet tall if he was a foot.
Yeah. But it really is, refreshing to see them finally all come under one.
Oh my God, yeah.
you know, you can have the Mary Philip Poulains of the world on the ice at the same time as, you know, a Jenner or like, and you're not constantly worried about, you know, your perception even within the community, because there's this weird, like, all right, are you going to be in the established league, or are you going to break off and kind of go with this rogue, kind of weird traveling circus, like, you know, and then you would always have Canada USA, you know, kind of rivalry series just to kind of keep them moving. And so now you've actually got a logistic domestic league that, again, you know, you mentioned with girls looking up to idols in soccer here, you know, here's something that an entire generation of Canadians and Americans and all of that can look and be like, all right, if I do really well, you know, I could get drafted into this. I can actually get paid a livable wage that all I have to do is play hockey, not I'm a hockey player and I have to do accounting off the side of my desk because they don't pay me enough to have a livable wage, which was what was happening before.
The old USFL. But yeah, you know, and what I was going to say too is, you know, the fact that none of these teams are stacked. You know what I mean? You look at the way that they formatted the draft, every single roster has at least one star on it, which is exactly what you want. Every single roster has leaders that have won championships internationally, domestically. That's what you want. Every single one of these teams has international players, which is exactly what you want to grow the game. Because, I mean, as much as we're, you know, sending all the kudos and love and affection towards this thing, I mean, let's be honest, Canada and the US have, you know, taken miles and miles and miles of runway before these other countries have, you know, since started to catch up. So, I mean, the fact that they're given this opportunity now, this is enticing for these other countries to kind of step up their funding and their support behind women's hockey. So that way, hey, maybe we can have an international league where we have professional teams in Sweden, we have professional teams in Finland, right? And this is exactly what I think a lot of these leagues are trying to do, is go global. You look at the NFL, they've been trying to get into the European market for years. The NHL, they're talking about expansion again. The NBA is the most diverse game outside of soccer. They're trying to get, you know, international. This is a great opportunity for the PWHL to, one, take baby steps to get the league going, but you really have an infrastructure that's kind of, you know, up for grabs right now. So you can take that and say, let's take our base, what we've got, we can grow it, and we'll be the first one to infiltrate these other countries internationally and really be a true global game, right? So when you say world champion, it's an actual world champion.
Well, and that's it too, right? Is I like the, I don't know if cautious is the right word to use here, but I'll use it for lack of a better
caution.
one here.
Caution to the wind.
but a measured approach to how they started, right? Because let's call it what it is. And you mentioned it right there, is it's a largely Canada and US dominated, you know, it's essentially their national teams plus we'll grab the best players from, you know, Sweden and Finland and a handful of other countries. And that's essentially the league there, right? Well, you know, you don't have these giant existing hotbeds of talent like the NHL or the Major League Baseball or NBA or whatever kind of has in these other countries. So had they started with 10, 12, 14 teams, I think you would have seen a more watered down product.
You would have.
And in year one, you want to make sure that you are catching eyeballs and you know, highlighting it for all the right reasons. Now, that's not to say I don't think that they should expand even as early as next year. I think they should, but at the same time too, I'm glad they went with, you know, 6 teams. Let's get it right and slowly span out from there, rather than going too fast, too much, too soon, and suddenly, you know, all of these grand visions we had here, you know, instead of having sponsors line up to throw money at them, they're now seeing people bailing, you know, a year early on their commitments and whatnot.
And I mean, nothing entices people to want something more than to not give them access to everything. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's like, if we start out and we have a 20-team league right out of the gate, well, how many, you know, superstars are we talking about being on each team, like we just spoke to, right? Even the NHL, you can say, how many legit superstars are there and how many teams have access to them, right? So the fact that they are doing it this way, 6 is perfect. You've got a competitive balance. You're diverse enough where you have enough travel where you can get kind of, one, the niche markets that you know are going to do well from a fan base perspective and from a viewership perspective. But 2, you're also going to create this sense of competitiveness for these other cities that are saying, holy, look at the success that Minnesota is having. Look at the success that Ottawa is having. Look at the success that Montreal is having. Because, I mean, 14,000 people.
Minnesota just couldn't let us have, even for a week. Ottawa sets the record. 5 days later, Minnesota goes out and breaks it. Couldn't even let us have a full 7 days.
Yeah, but you know what? It's all in perspective, right? Because again, you talk about location. The fact that they're able to fill up TD Place, given all of the structural issues that are going on with the arena, I mean, that's incredible, and everyone deserves props for that. The fact that Minnesota plays in a larger venue, hey, that's great that you're seeing them fill that venue that they're playing in. Minnesota's a hockey area. It's rich. I mean, the Mighty Ducks was filmed there. You know what I mean? Like, if anything is going to entice people, it's getting hockey in Minnesota. So, yeah, the fact that we've got these full arenas watching these extremely talented women.
Yeah,
it's just again, it's amazing that we've gotten to this point. And yeah, the fact that now the sky is the limit, take it. Take it there.
Yeah.
So you got to, you strike while the iron's hot, as they say, but you also don't want to bite off more than you can chew. So again, like you said it earlier, the cautious, measured approach, I think, is legitimate. You have to take that. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you guys don't have this grand vision in your head that you have a 32 team, league that spans internationally, you're missing the boat, because you have a perfect opportunity to do that right now.
Yeah. Well, 24 games in a season. The playoffs are slated to begin May 6th right now. So again, starting in January, kind of wrapping up similar time to NHL playoffs. So nice tie in there. They've actually got a 3-on-3 showcase tied into NHL All-Star Weekend as well. So they're doing a lot of the good things there, and really making sure that they are positioning themselves for success. But, let's say you are all of a sudden, Jana Hefford, and you're in charge of sitting down with, LA Dodgers owners, Mark and Kimbra Walter, who essentially are financing the league by and large here, right? And they say, all right, you got to pitch us on what 2 cities in 2025 we are going to expand to. Who's at the top of your list for those 2 next locations?
Well, again, I think that strategically, I'd be looking at, where's our biggest market overseas, right? Is it Sweden? Is it Finland?
You're going overseas right away, right off the hop here.
I honestly think that it's a unique opportunity that you don't get a chance to do very often, right? And I think 2 other places that could really benefit from having, this type of environment are both Canadian cities. I look at Quebec City, who is absolutely starved for anything professional at this point, because how many times the NHL teased the Nordiques coming back?
Oh, it's a weekly, batting eyelashes across the bar at them there. So
yeah, and I think a perfect opportunity is to get into the prairies somewhere. You look at those hockey rabid fan bases, because I mean, look at Minnesota, what they're doing. Go north, right? Go to Saskatchewan, go to Manitoba, go to Alberta. Like, those are places where, again, you could really kind of corner a market. I mean, like, Saskatchewan seems like a perfect opportunity. They've got junior hockey out there. They've got the CFL out there. That's it.
Yeah.
So, great. Let's get this in here. We'll be the first professional hockey program in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I wrestled with a couple options there, right? And ultimately where I landed ended up being 2 American cities for the simple reason that
we're a Canadian show, Kyle. We're a Canadian
I'm
show.
aware that we are a Canadian show. I designed the logo with a big red maple leaf. Don't worry, that fact is not lost on me. What I'm thinking though,
we want to take all the teams and bring them down to Phoenix.
Yeah, it's now the Desert League, and but no, what I'm thinking is you got to kind of look at where everything is based. Right, everything's on the East Coast. Everything is East right now, and by and large, that was by design, right? Because until I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, when Air Canada all of a sudden hopped up as a corporate sponsor and is actually going to be helping them out with some travel logistics. Which, I mean, for a startup league, WNBA has been around for decades, and they still can't even get their freaking travel figured out. Like
WNBA is punching air right now, seeing that they've got an airline sponsoring the league.
Well, give us a friggin' franchise in Toronto like we want there, and then Air Canada will help you out there. WNBA,
exactly.
Get your lives together.
Exactly.
But I ultimately ended up with Chicago and Detroit for the simple reason that. Again, centrally located, Chicago, one of the biggest media markets in the world, right? Yep. So you're going to want to tap into that. Detroit, hockey town. All of a sudden, they can operate out of, Little Caesars Arena if they want to. They can maybe tie into your beloved Michigan Wolverines, maybe play out of their barn out there too. So lots of different options. And you're kind of keeping everything geographically tight because if it's the Los Angeles Dodgers owner and they didn't put a team in LA year one, even though Los Angeles, giant media market, my sneaking suspicion is they're going to kind of, plug up that Eastern Seaboard and kind of Central first. And then all of a sudden they'll have 6-team expansion year, and you'll see the Vancouver, the Calgary, the Edmonton, LA, and kind of sweep that whole Western Seaboard all of a sudden.
Almost like the original 6 in the NHL. And then all of a sudden you see this massive expansion and you've got the Canucks, the Kings, the Flames. So I mean, that wouldn't be too far-fetched. And I mean, I look at your plan. I think that's exactly what they probably will do. I'm one of these big thinkers. I'm like,
but I see meatballs. I see IKEA. I see gold and blue.
But see, this is the thing. You talk about sponsorships. IKEA. How much money have they stolen from us over the years? Put it back into professional women's hockey. You know what? I feel like I'll invest in something then.
Yeah, there you go. You'll buy some more balsa wood furniture there. Allen keys and nothing wooden pegs.
Nothing will test your relationship more than going to IKEA and then putting together whatever it is you got from IKEA.
Yeah.
It's like, what an absolutely brilliant scam IKEA's got going on, right? It's like, hey, we've got all these supplies. Come on in. You pick it up. You deliver it to yourself. You put it together, and then if it doesn't work,
yeah, you know what? It's literally Kramer's build your own pizza pie scheme. It's
100%.
People want to come in. You put your toppings in. You smash the dough. You twirl them. You stick it in the oven. There. That's what it is. Yeah. Here's all the stuff. It's in the box. You go build it yourself. Here's a picture of what it should look like. We'll give you German instructions in 40 different languages, and we'll have missing pieces just to really piss you off there too.
Saying it's a picture is greatly over exaggerating. It is a Saturday morning cartoon that was drawn by a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
There's no words in it whatsoever. It's just these pictures of these dumb, cartoon couples putting together this crap. So, anyways, it's
and that is our weekly rant on furniture, ladies and gentlemen. You can expect that as a staple for every episode here to come.
I'm sure that we could find something that just,
You know what really grinds my gears?
Yeah, we got to get former host of the Front Office Podcast, Kevin Kelly, on for a couple of segments to really take us into the deep realm of hatred towards random objects.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Hats off to the PWHL.
Yeah, fantastic. Again.
Yeah, more golf claps coming their way there. Absolutely.
So I got another one. Now that we're kind of got the juices flowing and whatnot, I want to talk about basketball. I want to talk about basketball because one,
we talked about the Flint Tropics, and now you're thinking about Jackie Moon and the short shorts.
100%. It's really kind of, get my creative juices flowing with this. So, Toronto Raptors, they're the only Canadian team, so we're going to be talking about them a lot.
Yeah,
but
by proxy, they have stolen much of the spotlight.
Yes, by proxy. But at the end of the day, I mean, you talk about the PWHL starting January 1st. Mm-hmm. You talk about Christine Sinclair retiring, very recently. This is falling right into this, and I think it gets overlooked a little bit because of, everything else that's going on. But Toronto just made a massive trade for the future of their franchise. So for anyone who doesn't follow the NBA or who missed it because whatever, you got too drunk, you've been nursing a hangover since New Year's Day, the Toronto Raptors bringing home not only a Canadian, but like a homegrown Canadian whose godfather is the best Canadian basketball player of all time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, Kyle.
Oh, that guy?
Yeah.
oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, I mean, this is where if there weren't such intellectual properties, we'd be playing, the "I'm Coming Home" P. Diddy song right now. But
100%.
RJ coming back north of the border, which
RJ Barrett, man.
Like, I can honestly say this is something that I felt would probably happen at some point in his career.
Yeah.
But I also had that feeling of we'll get that one Steve Nash season, and it never materialized.
Yeah,
right? So,
and usually it happens when they're way past their prime, and they just kind of parade them out there for 2 minutes a game. And it's like we're getting a legitimate star at 23 years old, who's a former 3rd overall pick.
Well, this is what I think even those who do follow the NBA and are legitimate basketball fans are really overlooking. Is I think they have been drinking a little bit too much of the New York tabloids who, guess what? They don't like a ton of athletes in New York. They're usually pretty harsh on a lot of them. So the fact that
poor Zach Wilson.
Yeah, oh my God, yeah, poor Zach Wilson, dainty Zach Wilson, coming from Utah. But anyways, it really it's something that I've never understood, the fact that you spend the 3rd overall pick to get this guy who his entire upbringing was regarded as one of, if not the best players in his entire draft class. Going out of high school, depending on which scouting service you were looking at, was ranked higher than Zion, right? Ja wasn't even on any kind of scouting list there until he balled out there in university. So it always struck me as a bit of sour grapes where the Knicks went into that draft lottery being like, Zion's coming to the Garden, Zion's coming to the Garden. And then not just one, but 2 players get snuck out from right underneath their grass. And to me, RJ Barrett is not just a consolation prize. Like, he's a legitimate piece. And
absolutely.
Yeah, he doesn't have the star power of a Ja Morant who, oh, look, he just got injured and, it was 25-game suspension for off-court stuff. And Zion Williamson is doing his best to eat his way out of the league right now. Like, it's kind of a sad story with him there, what's going on. But, neither one of those 2 are guaranteed to still be playing 5, 6, 7 years down the road. I think RJ Barrett's going to be one of those guys who, into his late 30s, he's going to go out on his own terms. Like, you were going to get someone who's going to be playing for a long time. And RJ
who's going to want to stay.
Yeah, who's going to want to stay and be an ambassador for the city he grew up in. And now he gets to play in front of all of his hometown family, friends, everything. Like, he was already chaperoning Emmanuel Quickly around town, and these are the spots to eat, and here, this is where you want to avoid. And Jane and Finch, don't go down there at night.
Yeah. And not only that, but he's playing his ass off.
Well, that's just it, right? 4 games since joining the Raptors. Okay. He's averaging 21 points, 3 assists, 6.5 rebounds, shooting .538 from field goal, and then .526 from 3-point range, which is unheard of. Like, he's not going to sustain that. But every single one of those stats are career highs. Don't sit there and tell me that there isn't a boost that happens when you're coming home, right?
Yeah.
And it's always just struck me as, guess what? Tom Thibodeau is a very demanding coach, very very defensive, very close-minded. Let's kind of run it almost like bad boy Pistons era, smothering defense, and this is how we're going to win games ugly. That
Yeah.
is not the player RJ Barrett is.
No.
So had he landed on any other team, I think you probably would be talking about him in a similar vein to Zion and Ja. And yeah, he doesn't have the high flying acrobatics, but he'd be putting up the points in different ways. And I've never understood the hatred. I think it's just New Yorkers being New Yorkers there and kind of burying them. But yeah, it's a huge, huge get for the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact of the matter is both of these teams won the trade because OG Anunoby is no slouch of a basketball player. I mean, the guy's a phenomenal defensive talent. He's a 3-and-D guy.
What Tom Thibodeau wants.
And exactly. And he's the exact type of persona that does well in the New York media. He doesn't get rattled. He doesn't speak. He's not an outlandish personality. He'll do so well there. But I mean, so let's kind of backtrack a little bit because let's evaluate the full trade. And I actually have something really cool that'll say what led to us getting RJ Barrett. But so overall, Toronto gets RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, who again phenomenal point guard out of University of Kentucky, and a 2024 second round pick, which is actually the Pistons pick. So it's essentially a first round pick.
Yeah.
The Knicks get OG Anunoby, Malachi Flynn, who never lived up to the promise of a first-round pick here. I mean, wasn't really given an opportunity, given the depth that they had at point guard with Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. But
those guys have also been gone for a bit,
and
he hasn't exactly stepped up there.
Very
either,
true.
So I don't think there's many Raptors fans that wouldn't have driven him to the airport knowing that RJ was coming.
I don't think people are too sad about that one. But a guy that I think really personified what Masai Ujiri kind of wanted the Raptors front court to be, but again, and a guy who fits perfectly with New York, Precious Achiuwa. I mean, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's physical. He can rebound. He can play defense. Tom Thibodeau type of guy, right? So I mean, overall, and you look at the returns for both teams. I think the combined records are 8-1 between the two of them since this trade's been made. So I mean, obviously, this is working out well. It's meshing well with their existing rosters, and I mean. Yeah, the fact that RJ Barrett was the third overall pick in a very, very deep first round shows how much promise he's got. OG Anunoby, let's just put this in perspective. He was supposed to be a top 5 pick when he came out, but he sustained a pretty significant injury before, his last year before he came out. He fell at number 23. So the fact that the Raptors turned a pick that happened at 23, which again, you look at the NBA statistics, historically, anything outside of the top 5 is a crapshoot, whether they're going to be good or not.
Yeah.
So you look at a guy who you could turn from a 23rd overall pick into this, player so sought after that you're going to get a guy like RJ Barrett back plus Emmanuel Quickley, who is a 21st overall pick as a point guard. So, you're essentially getting 3 first-round picks back for a guy who you stole at 23. Yeah. So, I mean, the return there is incredible. But again, OG is the type of guy where you hate to lose because he just brings something that not a lot of guys are willing to do in today's NBA. Yeah. So, but again, I've got something, again, we'll kind of trace, because we know how everybody likes to do trade trees to see how all these things kind of materialize. I actually did one because I wanted to trace this back because it intrigued me because of OG Anunoby being a 23rd overall and whatnot. So let's go.
Year was 1999.
Yeah, let's go. But listen, we're gonna go all the way back to the year 2005. Everybody, okay? Little signing of a point guard out of Spain, Jose Calderon, signed with the Toronto Raptors. Okay, again, you look at the time, kind of international basketball was really taking that next step forward. Spain was really becoming that international powerhouse. Jose Calderon was actually a very, very good player. It just so happened that the teams that he played on with the Raptors at that time were not very good. So fast forward, has a great, I shouldn't say great. He has a good, solid 8-year career with Toronto. 2013, Jose Calderon is involved in a trade. Okay. So 3-team trade. Detroit gets Jose Calderon. Memphis gets Ed Davis, who was a first-round pick the year before by Toronto, Austin Day from the Pistons, Tayshaun Prince from the Pistons, and a 2013 second-round pick in that year's upcoming draft from Toronto. Toronto gets Rudy Gay and Hamed Haddadi. So again, Rudy Gay, was a borderline all-star at that time, best friends with Kyle Lowry, seemed to be a good match. And I mean, the fact that you got Rudy Gay for that price, pretty good trade, right? Rudy Gay didn't really pan out too well for Toronto, for those who remember, his short time here.
His brief cup of coffee in the sixth.
Because later that year, Rudy Gay gets traded. So again, 2013, Rudy Gay is part of a 7-player trade going to Sacramento. Sacramento gets Rudy Gay, Aaron Gray, a center, and Quincy Acey, who was a second-round pick, power forward out of Baylor. Toronto gets back John Salmons, again, talented defensive shooting guard. Chuck Hayes, grit and grind type of power forward. Patrick Patterson, who was a kind of spot-up 3, big body, 6'9", 6'10", power forward. And Grievous Vasquez, who was kind of like a swing 2-3 guard, but again, brought a unique talent. Again, Venezuelan, international flavor. That was the style that Toronto wanted to play at the time. Again, you look at what they got back. Patterson and Vasquez ended up being pretty good pieces for them during that time. 2015 rolls around. Grievous Vasquez, his value's at an all-time high. He's averaging, 12 to 13 points, 4 to 5 assists, couple of rebounds, shoots the ball pretty well. Well, you've got a team in Milwaukee who's looking to take the next step forward and kind of build around a young core. So they trade for Grievous Vasquez. Well, Toronto gets back the draft rights to Norman Powell, who ended up becoming a very, good bench player for the Raptors, especially in their championship run, and a 2017 first-round pick. Well, now we're starting to see the flower bloom a little bit as to where we're going to be going.
The flower is out of the earth now.
The flower is out of the earth. So the 2017 draft rolls along, and the first round pick they acquire from Milwaukee is the number 23 overall selection, which they select OG Anunoby with. So that leads us to today. OG Anunoby is now a member of the Knicks, which has now brought us back RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and a 2024 second-round pick. And we can all thank Jose Calderon for bringing us RJ Barrett. So again, golf clap for Jose. Thank you very much, sir.
There we go.
For bringing us the hometown kid who ultimately is looking like he's going to be a difference maker for this team.
Yeah. And, it's a good point, because I think that as the season goes on, people will kind of start realizing the talent that Emmanuel Quickley actually is.
Yeah.
He's not just a throw-in. People might think, okay, we got a backup point guard. No, he is a starting point guard who happened to be boxed out by the fact that Jalen Brunson is playing out of his mind in New York.
Yeah.
Right. And they briefly tried to experiment with having Quickley and Brunson out there, and quickly realized that having one defensive liability, you can kind of make up for. Having two defensive liabilities, a little bit too much. But in limited sheltered minutes, he was putting up 15 points a game before that trade. Yep. He is someone who can legitimately be, someone who leads an offense and can easily score in the low 20s over the course of a season here. But he's not that shoot first point guard. He can actually distribute the ball and actually get that offense moving a little bit, which is exactly what this team has been missing ever since Kyle Lowry left town, right? They've had nothing from the guard position, right? Fred VanVleet leaves town, and now all the guys that you kind of drafted thinking they're going to be those next guys to take over that mantle once FVV and Lowry leave town, they just whiffed on them. So this is a chance for, I think, Masai to kind of reset the roster. And, Pascal Siakam is going to get traded at some point here. Like, if he is still a member of the Raptors at the end of the year, like, I would be absolutely flabbergasted by that. But you look at the core they're now assembling, right? all of them are 24 or younger, right? You got
Mm-hmm.
RJ, you got Quickly, you got Scotty Barnes, you got
Mm-hmm.
whatever is about to come down from the Pascal trade, but I can guarantee you they'll all be early 20s, right? So
Yep.
now you're going from these, early 30s, late 20s, kind of, 27 to 33 aged core to we're now set for the foreseeable future here. Are we going to win the championship next year? No. But guess what? You're now positioned to be maybe a 8, 7, 6 seed in a wide open East, another year
Mm-hmm.
of development. Now you're kind of in that flirting with that top four all of a sudden. Like you're starting to see, again, depending what the return is for Pascal Siakam, that 5 year window to compete that every team kind of strives for, right? They want to get that window where that championship isn't, an aberration. It's a legitimate possibility. That's going to start to crack open a lot faster than people
Yeah.
realize, and quickly is going to be a huge part of that because Masai's done a good job at recouping assets in
Yeah.
trades because his drafts the last 5 years, oh boy, barren wasteland right there.
Other than Scotty Barnes, yeah, it's definitely been a you know uh, it's been a lot of
Why speculate? Here is
yeah.
his last 5 drafts for
Yeah,
you there.
oh, look at this. He comes
Okay.
prepared.
Grady Dick, currently in the G League, trying to figure out his shot right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Christian Koloko, 2022. Scotty Barnes, 2021. All right, we got one. We're on the
Yeah.
board, right?
He gonna do what? He
Yeah.
gonna do one.
Delano Banton, David Johnson, Malachi Flynn, Jalen Harris, Dewan Hernandez. From 2019, that is every player since 2019 over the last 5 drafts that the
Yeah.
Raptors have selected, and only one of them is currently rosterable.
Yeah, and again, the NBA draft, because there's only 2 rounds, you have to be dialed in on bringing the perfect people into your system. So, it's not like baseball where you have like 56 rounds and you can make 52 mistakes, and if you hit on 4 of your 56 guys, you're good. So, yeah, I mean, you go through these ups and downs of, okay, is this guy a franchise altering talent, or is he just going to be a role player for us? And I mean, I hear some of the names in there. Like, it's too early to say if Christian Koloko is going to be, a wasted pick, because the guy's 7 feet tall. He runs the floor well. Let's see if he can be that defensive guy off the bench like a Serge Ibaka was, back in in the title run. Delano Banton, he was a Toronto kid. Grew up there. Great story. Never really materialized as being that big point guard that they were looking at. I think they've kind of fix that by getting an Emmanuel Quickly in, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you look at where they sit now with their guards with Schroeder and Emmanuel Quickly, like that's a very good duo that you've got now at point guard. You can roll in off the bench. So, yeah, and I mean, you look at where things stand. I mean, Toronto's done so well with signing undrafted free agents that, I mean, missing on those guys doesn't really hurt as much, right? So, yes, you've missed. So, I mean, you have to make these trades in order to make up for that. But at the end of the day, they also haven't had a first-round pick very often in the last 10 years. You know what I mean? It's not like they've been saying, oh, well, we're picking number 2, number 3 every year. No. Like, you're trading these picks for guys like, Kawhi Leonard. You're trading these picks for, to get back a Jakob Poeltl. So, I mean,
inexplicably,
yeah. So, yeah, it's you can look at it from one perspective. I think we've had this talk before when we were talking about NFL and developing players and whatnot. If you know that you're not that great at drafting or evaluating talent coming out of university, trade it away.
No,
get an established piece, because if you have an established piece, you know what they bring to the table. It's a lot easier to palate and say, you know what, we may have missed on that pick anyway. It's a crapshoot. I took a chance. I brought in someone who I thought could help us right now. So yeah, I mean, I applaud them for looking at the situation for what it is and getting this great return back. Going back to your Siakam point, though, you're saying that, oh yeah, he's definitely getting moved. I think so too. I think that he's gone within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah,
even before the deadline comes up. Where do you think he's going to go, and where do you want to see him go to get pieces back?
So I've got 2 very distinct answers on that. where I think he's going, I think he's going somewhere to the West Coast based on most of the headlines and reports
Yeah.
you're kind of reading right now. Sacramento is heavily recruiting him. Golden State, despite having no assets of any interest to me whatsoever, are apparently linked to him left, right, and center. And oh, Jonathan Kuminga, right? Hey, he's going to come here and be the savior. Listen, I think Kuminga could be that nice piece for a championship team to kind of add to what they've got, but I don't see Kuminga turning into the guy all of a sudden when you're surrounded by a lot of all NBA talent and you haven't been able to carve out a role for yourself at a position that Golden State doesn't really excel at to begin with. So I see him going somewhere out to the West Coast there. Where I would love to see him go, and you know what? Like, screw it, let's just make the Canadian men's national team up here. Is I would love to see him get traded to Indiana, and the return being Benedict Mathurin from Quebec coming back up. Andrew Nemhard is coming back up. Then you can have some, Jarris Walker, maybe some draft compensation, stuff like that. I think it solves a lot of problems in, Indiana. They started off hot as a pistol, right out of the gates. They go all the way to the in-season tournament finals and then just get blown out by the Lakers because they realize, oh, we have zero size at our wing positions right now, right? So we're just getting carved up by this Lakers team whose average height is like 6'10".
Yeah,
on that roster.
And you're taking Miles Turner out of the paint, and they don't have anybody to supplement that that defense for sure.
Yeah. So it's Siakam, who can actually create his own offense. And, I'm not going to say that he's an all NBA level defensive player here, but he can play serviceable defense.
He can hold his own. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And he can actually cover some of those perimeter spots where, again, he's not a 7-footer, but he's long. Those arms, when he puts them straight up, right, he adds a lot of length to that lineup. So I think it's kind of a win-win proposition, and Indiana's already got the number one offense in the entire NBA right now. You add in someone that can create their own shot and act as a complementary piece to, Halliburton and company out there. And I think you've really got the makings of something. So that's where I would love to see him go. But I have a sneaking suspicion that someone on the Pacific Seaboard is going to be acquiring our friend Pascal sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I've heard those rumors too, and I mean, I think I even saw that Sacramento had taken themselves out of negotiations. So I mean, who knows if that's true or not? I mean, you look at the track.
George Costanza there. They're leaving it, but they left something behind the pillow that they've got to come back for later.
Yeah, because I mean, you talk about Jonathan Kuminga, coming back from Golden State and a potential trade there, which again would kind of reunite some men's national team members because Andrew Wiggins would have to be the key piece coming back to match salaries, which I wouldn't hate. But I look at what Sacramento could potentially send back, and I mean, they're not going to send you Fox, they're not going to send you Sabonis. So I mean, you're pretty much Keegan Murray or bust at that point.
Yeah,
and Keegan Murray kind of brings the same skill set that a Kuminga would bring back, right? 6'6", 6'7", can shoot, can run the floor. He's an athletic guy. I mean, you've kind of got an abundance of those guys already. So, I mean, what do you need versus what can you get? That ultimately comes down to it. Pascal's in the last year of his contract. If they had moved him last year, they could have got twice as much as what they're probably going to get this year.
Well, and not to completely cut off your point here, we'll circle back to that. But this is what kind of pisses me off about this whole process here as well too, is OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam's price tag by all reports, and we're not just going with like a Toronto media bias here. Like, we're talking about legitimate NBA insiders from across North America have kind of said that a lot of the deals, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled with RJ and Quickly coming over here, and I think it's a good trade. But I think they got a good trade by giving up a great trade had they not just done this 6 months earlier.
Yeah. And I mean, teams either hold on to players too long or they trade them too soon, right? Like, there's never that midline of, because everybody thinks that they can turn it around with what they've got, right? Just give us one more week. And it all depends on who the coach is too, right? Like, Nick Nurse may have said, no, like Pascal is essential to my system. OG is essential to my system. You get Darko in now, and he's looking at that saying, well, they don't really fit with what I want to do. They're kind of, not, molding to what I expected them to be. So here's what I think could work with what I want to do. And as a GM or president of basketball operations, you've got to look at that and take because you hired this guy for a reason.
Yeah.
So you want to take his opinion for what it is. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know, any team other than the ones we've talked about. I mean, Atlanta still is kicking the tires apparently, but what can they legitimately send back? Because I mean, I think before he was sent to Utah, Collins would have been a good person to get back in a Pascal deal. You've got size, athleticism, rebounding. So
the problem with Atlanta, right, is acquiring, because Atlanta's record is actually no better than Toronto's right now.
Yeah.
Like they're not exactly running away with the East here. So
Sure.
the only way acquiring Pascal in Atlanta even makes sense is if you are going to keep DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, and Pascal together.
Which you're not going to do.
Yeah, but the only way that you're going to A, make salaries match, and B,
Yeah.
give any kind of reasonable offer that would even, make Masai want to pick up the phone is Murray is probably going to have to come back. And now that you've got Quickly and Schroeder there, do you even want that, right? So
yeah. So, but here's an interesting one for you, because I've heard rumors about this, and it makes sense based on what they just did and who they got. I mean, obviously, New Orleans has grown pretty tired of Zion Williamson's act.
So you're gonna bring him to the poutine country of the world.
Listen,
once that gravy hits the system with Zion,
do you not think that New Orleans food isn't stick to your ribs type of food? You got the beignets truck every second street. You got all these Cajun restaurants that I don't know if you had Cajun food before. It is delicious. Shout out to all the Cajun restaurants that want to give us a sponsorship for the show.
We will happily accept any kind of gumbo sponsorships that you've got.
Jambalaya, anything. But I mean, look at Zion Williamson wants to go somewhere, because I think, after the story came out in the summertime with that woman, trying to do what she was doing with him, obviously the media really taking a hard look at his weight issues and whatnot. Do you not think, like, going to a place like Toronto that would absolutely say, we don't give a shit? like we don't care. He's a great player. Send him up here. Do you not think that would be refreshing for him, and it would be able to let him kind of become the type of player that he ultimately was seen as when he was drafted first overall, especially playing with one of his best friends, with RJ Barrett?
And I think it's an interesting kind of line that you need to walk with our friend Zion there, right? I'm 100% on board. I think you need to get him out of New Orleans. He's, kind of burnt some bridges there. Whatever is happening with his circle of, people that are around him clearly are having an outsized influence on his life, and not maybe leading him down the right paths. And getting someone back in his life, like his former Duke running mate there in RJ Barrett, would possibly be good. I'm a little bit leery, and not even to say that, when you're looking across the NBA landscape, Toronto's not going to jump out as a giant, media market there, right? Compared to the Knicks or the Lakers or anything like that. But at the same time, right, a lot more of a spotlight is going to be on him. And unless he himself kind of commits to, I'm going to start taking, my professional athletics career seriously and getting my body in shape, and, not having 330 pounds come down on my knees and then wondering why they're giving out at such a young age here. Like, unless he commits to that, I think you might actually see it spiral a little bit more, because, the Toronto market, it's the only Canadian team north of the border. So not only do you have Toronto beat writers covering it, you've got all of their affiliates from across the entire country kind of breathing down his necks. And Canadians are polite, but they're not going to not ask the same questions that he's been asked 500 times down in the bayou either.
I get what you're saying, but I ultimately think that if he comes up to Canada, they're not going to care as much about him up here. Honestly,
or some of his entourage doesn't want to come up where it's cold.
Some of his entourage won't want to come up here. So I mean, I think that's kind of a blessing in disguise if he comes up to a place like Toronto, because you look at Kawhi Leonard. everyone was just like, oh yeah, whatever. Kawhi Leonard got traded to the Raptors, whatever, ho hum. And no one really cared about him until it's like, oh, they're making a run to the playoffs. Oh, they're making a run to the to the championship. Oh, they're beating Milwaukee and Philadelphia and Golden State. And all of a sudden, Kawhi Leonard's getting this national coverage and international coverage from from down in the States. But I ultimately think about if Kawhi Leonard did what he did with Toronto in any market down in the States, it would be 10 times as big as it was up
But
here.
here's the thing with Kawhi though. Kawhi is a one of one in the sense that like the whole like he's a weird guy isn't an act. Like
No.
I legitimately think he's part robot where he literally goes, he plays a game, and then I just envision him, where all of his teammates go out to the club. I just see him. He goes back to his minimalist apartment, just turns off all the lights, and just sits and just waits until it's the next game. Like I legitimately think that that's his life. So yeah, he doesn't care about the media or this or that. He gives like 3-word answers half the time to the questions anyways. So like it's tough to compare the two, whereas
I did see a commercial where he was a robot, and I mean I don't think that it was that much of a stretch. So I mean you're probably not far off.
Well, how much of a CGI budget do commercials really have, right? There had to be some sort of robotics ingrained in him already for them to have pulled that off. So but it's a really unique situation. I totally see where you're coming from. Would I love to see some sort of, and I think even for New Orleans, they're kind of stuck in this weird place where it's like max contract extension and, you kind of have to give it to them, but do they really want to throw that money at him? Do they feel good about it? Like it's going to come to a head sooner rather than later. And I think he needs to change locations. Is it Toronto that's going to ultimately end up happening? I think New Orleans is probably actually happiest out of those two teams in terms of if Toronto gets whatever Zion and whatever other package they throw together there of picks to kind of make it work. You've now kind of got this young core of Pascal fits really nicely alongside another, scorer in Brandon Ingram, who's kind of awkward, long limbs, tall, has that length, attacking wing. Like it would fit really well into them, and they could actually become a kind of a scary playoff team. I'm just sitting on the fence where I can see there's a 50-50 chance of he fizzles out within a year, and all of a sudden it's like 2 years go by and it's, hey, is Zion even in the league anymore? Or the greatest dynamic Raptors duo of all time, RJ and Zion, the Duke Blue Devils have come north. Like it would literally go to one of those two extremes. I don't see him coming up here and be like, oh yeah, third team all NBA, 20 points a night, 10 boards. Like,
but I mean, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Michael Scott / Wayne Gretzky. Because I mean, I go back to the Kawhi Leonard thing. Do you think that the majority of Raptor fans were happy when they traded DeMar DeRozan, who had 3 years left in his contract, for an expiring deal with Kawhi Leonard for the chance to win some playoff games?
I think you get two very different answers on that. Number one, the people
I do. Like I was all for it when it happened. Yeah. Like at what point do you say, well, is this going to be the same record that plays over and over again if DeMar stays here?
Yeah. So you talk to people who actually watch basketball, everyone was like, home run win for the Raptors. You talk to people who only watch the Raptors and don't sort of live beyond the Jack Campbell bubbles and all of that, and from Scarborough, eating up downtown. Like they couldn't believe what had happened. And then you ask them now and they're like, I knew it all along. It was going to play out. And it's like, well, I've got some screenshots of you losing your mind when it first happened, actually. But
So, but again, like that just poses the question, like, even if the chance of Zion really living up to his potential is as low as 10%, do you not think at this point, because Pascal is going to be a free agent at the end of the year, right? Is it not worth taking a swing to see if you can tap into that 10%? It's like winning the lottery.
I just
right?
think that there's a safer alternative out there that you could get
Again.
a vet.
I'm bringing teams overseas in the PWHL. I'm making Zion Williamson trades. I'm blowing the whole system up, baby.
Yeah. George is getting upset.
George is getting upset. I was spotting raccoons.
Yeah.
They were my boxes, you idiot.
Yeah. I didn't have the heart to tell you. But I mean, it's a good point though. But at the end of the day, I really do think that there's going to be a more attractive package than what New Orleans is going to offer, because I really do think it'll ultimately come down to, all right, here's Zion. This is the package. Whereas I would rather have a Mathurin, a Walker, a Nemhard plus picks, or a Kuminga plus Wiggins plus picks plus other throw-ins and pick swaps.
But now you want Kuminga. Before, Kuminga's not good enough to come back, but now all of a sudden we bring up Zion Williamson. I want Kuminga coming back to my team.
That should show you how concerned about Zion Williamson I am there. Where I'm not even flip-flopping. I am literally just saying that is how scary until I get that commitment out of him that, I'm going to hire a personal chef goes, because RJ's going to apparently show him where all the Omoses are here in Canada. There, it's his go-to sponsorship.
RJ, you know all the healthy places to go, man. Just take him there, get some good food in. Listen, you can get some of the best food of your life any corner, and it's way healthier than what you're getting in most restaurants, honestly. And it's again, it's fun to talk about, because whenever the Raptors are losing, it's kind of like no one really pays that much attention to them. Now that they've made this trade, it's kind of re-energized the fan base a little bit. The coverage gets more extensive. The rumors start floating out there. The speculation's out there. This is going to be an exciting couple of months for Toronto, honestly. And what they do in the next month and a bit is going to shape their franchise for the next 10 years, much like the Jose Calderon signing in 2005. That's led us to where we are now. So, anyways, that was a great chat about that. I mean,
apologies to Jack Armstrong, who's the actual announcer there, as opposed to Jack Campbell, the former Leafs goaltender.
The terrible Edmonton Oilers goaltender.
But
we believe in you, Jack. You'll get back there. Keep working in the minors. Get your game back.
One of these days, you will be the starting goalie for the Bakersfield Condors once again, Jack.
Hey, he's the highest paid player in the AHL. So just,
he's doing something right with his life.
Get off his back. He's the Wade Redden of the 21st century.
There we go. Well, I mean, we might as well just make a quick lateral jump here from our friend RJ to another Canadian basketball player who just happened to win the Lou Marsh Award, which is now rebranded the Northern Star Award, which I don't know how I feel about that to begin with there. The Northern Star Award feels like some sort of like dance mom competition. Like, all right, it's the Miss Congeniality Award or something like that. I kind of like the Lou Marsh one, but
I mean, if you've done your research on Lou Marsh, I mean, it's interesting. Let's just put it that way. So it's something. Let's just rebrand it Captain Canada.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the best athlete in Canada, Captain Canada Award. There you go. Yeah. We've already done your job for you, selection committee.
All right. Well, we will take our royalty checks mailed to
1867 sports show.
Yeah.
Kyle and I had to do a double take before we got on the air right now, because we were unsure if we went with sports show or podcast. So we're good. Yeah, we're fine. We're fine now.
After fact checking ourselves to begin the night on
this is how you know the podcast is going to be good, because we don't even know what it's called before we jump on.
Well, you know what? For those that have been listening to the other shows on the network, Eric Long was part of our fantasy football podcast for one and a half seasons, and he never got the name of the podcast right one single time.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
Batting 1,000 there for Eric. Yeah. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You ever heard of our little friend?
Shai?
It's Shai.
Is it Shai?
Yeah.
I thought it was Shai.
You're just a little shy.
I've been calling her Crandall.
Oh my god.
Okay. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
We'll say SGA for you there.
That's better.
We'll go with the acronyms. But 25 years old, second basketball player to ever win it. Who do you think the first one was? We already mentioned him once.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know it.
Jesus.
I know it's Steve Nash.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Speaking of Captain Canada there, but we'll do a deep dive one of these episodes on the wild season of the Brooklyn Nets that he underwent
Yeah,
not that
honestly,
long ago.
that's a good idea. That's a very good idea.
The post-mortem of the James Harden, KD, Jacques Vaughn, Steve Nash saga.
The only Canadian content that we'll speak about is the person who gets mistreated. So it'll be perfect for this show.
Yeah, there you go. So 2022-23 rolls around and, 31.4 points per game, 1.6 steals, 5.5 assists, 4.8 rebounds, shot 5-10 from the field.
Like, stud.
Unbelievable. 25 years old here for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And
which is what can I just say? Stupidest name in the league.
What would you have called them?
Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, I don't know. It's just a mouthful. Like, why you got to say Oklahoma City? Just say Oklahoma Thunder.
Like, what really grinds my gears is regional versus statewide team things here.
Florida Panthers, man. It's not like we're saying Sunrise Panthers with the stupid palm trees on their shoulders, okay?
Yeah, they're the only show in town. It's not like Tampa Bay is in their same state there,
They run Florida. They run Florida.
But takes home the award and, first all-star appearance for all NBA first team as well too. Like, it was a season of firsts, and you could kind of even see his progression over several seasons. And it was a eyebrow-raising trade when it happened, and it seems to get worse by the year. Like, this has to be the year where finally, like, the Clippers.
If they don't win this year, they're not winning. If they don't win this year, they're not winning.
Well, that's just it, right? And it'll end up going down as just a franchise crippling trade if they don't win a championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
it's strange how part of that trifecta of Paul George and James Harden and Kevin Durant and anyone else that you trade 17 pieces for, leave the franchise that they're going to in ruins because they there's no one there to play with them. Weird how that happens.
Bizarre, right?
Continue.
James Harden just quits on more teams than most people play for. And
I'm happy that this is a Canadian show because we don't have to talk about him, because talk about grinding your gears. I cannot stand that guy, but you don't have to worry about him because he's not Canadian. So continue.
There we go. Right. So unless the Raptors and Clippers meet in the NBA finals, no. He who shall not be named. But full trade for those who can't remember. Paul George gets sent to the Clippers in exchange for SGA, Danilo Gallinari, 4 first-rounders, plus 3 first-round pick swaps. So really the equivalent of 7 first-round picks for Paul George. And they've got not even a Western Conference Finals appearance to show for it here. So, like, it really does go to kind of show that, number one, when you've got elite young talent, don't give up on them. Right? Because there is no magic bullet, because every team that is traded for James Harden or Kevin Durant over the last few years has fallen well short of the NBA championship there.
Yep.
And even when KD got his ring, it was because he joined a 73-win team.
He signed as a free agent where no one from that core group left.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, I mean, our friend Mr. Gilgeous-Alexander really was in the MVP conversation last year. Ultimately,
you can say his name, Shai. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if I'm going to emotionally scar you here or trigger you at this point.
I mean, I've just been calling him the wrong name since he came into the NBA, but whatever.
Yeah. So matter. Stephen Gilgeous-Alexander.
Oh man.
Right? Like, it was a legitimate MVP push last year. Didn't make the final ballot. It wasn't in the top 3. but now is squarely in the mix. Him and Joel Embiid and probably Jokic, and barring some sort of injury or second half fall off here, it's probably going to be those three on the final ballot right now. If you're to kind of power poll everything, like, not to sidebar this, but the fact that they took him 11th overall, but he still gets listed as a Charlotte draft pick drives me insane, because the NBA is the only league in the world that does these stupid draft day trade. Every other league just goes, oh, all right, LA and Charlotte, you guys made a trade. Cool. SGA, you got drafted by LA rather than drafted by Charlotte, swapped pick rights for Miles Bridges, 11th overall. But that was just my little grind the gears of the inner workings of Adam Silver's mothership.
Best pick in Golden State Warrior history, Vince Carter.
Yeah. Oh, it drives me insane. I don't understand why they keep that stupidity up there, but it's an absolute king's ransom that they paid to get Paul George. And now you look at where both of those players are, even over the last 3 seasons. And I don't think there's an executive in the entire league who would make that trade today, knowing how that panned out.
No. And the thing is, you'd be getting the exact same package back if you had Shai, but the thing that, and I was actually going to bring it up to see if it triggered anything and we could segue over to it. It's like, what do you think it's going to take for the Raptors to get, SGA over to Toronto?
I think you've got to give them 10 first-round picks.
We will trade you Drake's masters for all of his songs, and then you'll come over here. But yeah, going back to the award, I mean, it's not surprising when you see the success that guy's had, especially at the international level. We talked about Christine Sinclair taking up her game at the international level at the start of the show. This is kind of fitting that we're talking about this now, because you look at what happened at the World Championships, a few months ago. The guy was just unbelievable. And you talk to anyone in that tournament and they're like, he was the best player by far. Like, there was no one else that could touch him. And I mean, I think that's where you're starting to see Canada really getting to the world stage now, is that you've got these elite talents like an SGA, like an RJ Barrett. Andrew Wiggins is still an elite player. And now you're talking about all these guys combined with a Jamal Murray, who just came off of an incredible playoff run to an NBA championship with Denver. I mean, Dylan Brooks, who ultimately is looked at as like the biggest villain in the world, again, fantastic player. I think every NBA franchise would want a guy like him on their team. Canada's really making that move now to becoming a legitimate contender for a gold medal at these world championships, at these Olympics. This is an exciting time for sports in Canada. So the fact that we're talking about soccer, we're talking about women's hockey, we're talking about Toronto Raptors making a move, we're talking about the state of Canadian basketball. I mean, this is just phenomenal. Phenomenal where we're at right now. And kudos to SGA for really embracing that change and the shift that Oklahoma City's made from going from, we've got the big 3, and then we've got another semblance of a big 3, and now we're going to go and just blow up everything, and we're going to start out from scratch. And now you've got SGA, Chet Holmgren. I mean, you've got a legitimate semblance of a very good Western Conference power in the making that's going to be there for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
well, you look at even just the trajectory of the Canadian men's national team. We've gone from, please, can our 2 NBA players not opt out of this tournament, to, it probably won't be Paris, but just because of the numbers, right? But and you look at, those that you would actually probably want from a roster fit / positional standpoint, but it'll probably be the 2028 Summer Games, where we're going to be cutting Canadian NBA players for that instance, right? Like, for this one coming up, maybe you get some kind of fringe role players, because there's enough Canadians in the NBA now that you would have to make cuts if they all declared they were eligible. But really, some of them, it's like, okay, well, do we really need Trey Lyles on the team here or anything like that?
Yeah.
So But 2028, I think we're now going to have some of those Olympic camps where it is like Team USA, where it's, what direction do you want to do? Do you want to have a veteran heavy team? Do you want to have a young team? Do you want to go, 3-point specialist? Like, you're going to have sort of your pick of the litter. And like you say, that's where you want your program to be, where you can choose what is the right personality and culture fit and all of that when we're making this roster, rather than crossing your fingers and hoping you get I'll come by summer camp and sniff things out, but I'll ultimately bow out 2 weeks before the competition, which is what it used to be for those who actually followed this team.
No, and again, speaking of where things sit from a futuristic perspective, I mean, the sport of basketball has never been in a healthier spot in this country. And the fact that we're seeing star players in the NBA and the NCAA like fighting for roster spots on this program, like, what an envious position to be in now, right? Because like, you look at the impact that a star player can have, like when you look at Slovenia and Luka Doncic, who by all intents and purposes is the only star an NBA player that plays for that team. Well, yeah, they're going to win some games against some of the bottom feeders, but they're not going to be able to compete against every single one of these powerhouses. Like, they're going to beat, the odd one here and there. Look what Germany just did. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've got a really well-rounded team. Canada can really be that type of program where you've got depth. You don't have to worry about, if one of our starters fouls out, we're screwed.
Yeah.
No, like, in fact, you're going to have maybe 2 or 3 guys deep at every position. Maybe not center, but other than that, you're in a good spot. So yeah, I really like where things are at. SGA is obviously the catalyst behind all this because he's a legitimate MVP contender. And yeah, the fact that he's now a major award winner in this country is not surprising. And I think it's only going to continue from now on because Steve Nash was able to do what he did and kind of own, the basketball landscape on his own. You look at where it is now, SGA standing out amongst a world of talent.
Yeah.
So what does that say about his skill set? So yeah, I mean, the Northern Star Elite, super mega happy award that he won for last year is definitely well deserved. And yeah, I mean, hey,
golf claps. There you go. Well done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've covered a lot, but there's one more thing that I think that I want to bring up because both of us have kind of been talking about it for the last little bit. We talk about all the great stuff that's been going on in Canada. We've talked about all the great stuff that's going on with the Raptors right now, even though their season's not really what they want. I think we got to take a step back and really kind of end the show, and kind of bring things back down so we can, just kind of reevaluate things for what we come to expect from our beloved Toronto Blue Jays.
Things are a little too positive around here, and the show's been coming along, so we really need to end with a dead cat thump here, which is the Toronto Blue Jays offseason so far.
We've already hooked you into the show. You've been listening this long. Hey, kudos to you guys, and thank you very much for doing that. Stick with us for the next 10 minutes. We will not disappoint you with this gloomy take on the Toronto Blue Jays.
And worst case scenario, we promise at least 3 more Seinfeld references before we hop off air.
You got it, buddy. So
giddy up.
Giddy up. So you look at what they've been rumored to do, which is a thing that every offseason this happens. Toronto's interested in this player. Rumors are that they're going to make a play for this player. Well,
guess what? When I was in high school, I was interested in Jessica Alba. Didn't mean I was going to marry her one day, right? So,
well, you know what? You were trying to will it in, but you know what? You're far better off, man. You're far better off.
Yeah.
I've met your wife, and I wouldn't trade her for 10 Jessica Albas.
That's absolutely correct. It really is, though, something that I feel like the Toronto media, again, just tries to will things into existence here.
It's just thinking the same thing.
Where it's, but this was one of the rare times where it wasn't the Toronto media who got everyone in a buzz here, right? It was literally Shohei Ohtani is on a plane to Toronto right now. Oh no, it was Robert Hirschman from Dragon's Den. Whoops. Like, what? How you get an MLB Japanese pitcher confused with a venture capitalist? I have no idea, but here we are, 2024, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a my bad situation, everybody. Yeah, I mean, the fact that they were as far down that rabbit hole as they were, I think all of us got our hopes up, because that never happens with the Blue Jays, where it's like the biggest free agent in, let's just say, sports history, because we've never seen an athlete do what they're doing, hit free agency like this. The fact that Toronto was even in the discussion and they were one of the final 2 teams that he was going to sign with.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone just said, holy shit, this is going to happen. This is happening.
It titillated the fan base.
And you talk about manifesting it to happen. They're starting to hallucinate that they see, like, any Japanese person boarding a plane going to Toronto. They're like, that's him. It's got to be him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the fact that they didn't get Shohei Ohtani, and regardless of the price tag, whatever you think about what the Dodgers did, it doesn't matter. They're going to make that back in merchandise, in media money within a year.
Yeah,
honestly. So, taking the contract aside, the fact that you could have got this unbelievable two-way talent that could have really taken your team to a legitimate World Series contender for however long he was going to sign there, it really was a punch in the gut. And I mean, you think about the scene from the Indiana Jones Temple of Doom movie where the heart gets, yeah, exactly. Exactly. What is it? Was it Jeff Passan? Or who?
I can't remember the actor.
Yeah, whoever it was that leaked that story, it's like he Kali-ma'd the entire Canadian fan base. And, not only that, but I think you lost out on the second biggest prize in a trade, because Juan Soto was also rumored to be coming to Toronto.
Yeah.
And at one time, it's like, hey, we're going to trade for Juan Soto. They're going to sign Shohei Ohtani, and it's going to be this, murderer's row lineup that the Blue Jays are going to roll out there. Well, you waited too long on Shohei Ohtani, and the Yankees just swooped in and said, all right, well, we don't want to go after Ohtani, but we'll gladly trade a few, pieces for Juan Soto.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you lost out on both of those guys, I think just kind of put such a huge damper, regardless of what they decide to do the rest of the offseason. And I mean, you look at what they have done or haven't done, did they bring back a nice piece that was, good for them, won a Gold Glove, and Kevin Kiermaier? Hey, solid signing, right? He did well for you last year. He hit the ball relatively well compared to what his career statistics have been. Is he going to ultimately fill the void of not getting one of those 2 superstar players? No,
absolutely not. Right. And I think what's really disappointing here for Blue Jays fans, right, is, obviously we got it. And then, oh no, we got a new puppy, but it died on the way home. Oh, sweet.
We're going mobile here. Don't worry. Keep going. We're going mobile. We're going mobile.
But episode 1, and we're getting on a tour of the Kirkwood household here.
Don't worry about what you're looking at. It's just my ceiling. It's okay. It's okay.
But it really is, the double gut punch. You lose out on Soto as well, too. But I think it's their inaction, which is really kind of eating away at a lot of the fans there, right? Because, Isaiah Kiner Falefa, IKF, if we want to acronym anything, I butcher his name every single time ever since he joined the major league ranks there. But like, I don't see how that puts you any further ahead than you were last year, right? You're letting Matt Chapman kind of walk in free agency, where you've kind of publicly stated we don't think he's worth the money that he's ultimately going to get, which is fine. But go out there and then do something about it, because the biggest holes that this roster has had, right, haven't been addressed. Right? Who's their fifth starting pitcher? Like, are you really hoping and putting all your eggs in the basket that, prospect Ricky Tiedemann is going to come in there and take that full-time role right out of the gate? Okay, great. Maybe that works out. But if not, you'll look at both their system and who they currently have as quote unquote replacements. There's not a lot there. So, like, are you going to spend that kind of money on, a top end arm like a Blake Snell or something like that? I don't know. DH, huge question mark right now as well too. So, and then if Chapman leaves, who's at third base? Is Espinal going to move over there? So I think that's kind of been the disappointing part. If you're a Blue Jays fan, is, hey, we need a fifth starter, we need a DH, and we need a third baseman. And we went out there, you chased the big fish, and you're coming back empty-handed, and you don't have a whole lot of direction right now.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at what they ultimately have been targeting, and I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that a left-handed bat is prominent, right? Yeah. Like that's a need that they need to address. The two names that they've been chasing for the last like 7 off seasons, it seems to be, like Cody Bellinger is one. I think he's the biggest name left, the biggest bat left on the market, which, hey, if you can reel in a guy like that, great. But I think at the price tag that he's currently at, is he going to give you what he's given LA the first couple of years of his career there, and a career resurrecting year last year in Chicago? Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, this guy was a former MVP. Yeah. He could hit 40 to 50 home runs for you on a really good year. He could also steal 20 to 30 bases for you and play a really good outfield. So, hey, if you can get that guy, bring him in. And again, like, I take the cost out of it because, one, baseball doesn't have a salary cap. Yeah. If Rogers is willing to spend the money, and obviously they are, because they are willing to invest in Shohei Ohtani, then, hey, go do it. Right? Like, enough talking
Not
about
my
it.
money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's okay. Only our cell phones and our cable bills will go just keep going through the roof. We're gonna be paying $400 a month. But yeah, I mean, the other guy that, again, every time he's become a free agent or he's up on the trading block, Jock Peterson. Like, again, solid bat. Is he going to hit 50 home runs? No, but he'll give you 25, which is okay. No. Is he going to knock in 120 runs? No, but he'll give you 75. That's okay. No. Better than Brandon Belt, what he gave you last year. Yeah. Like, you got to bring in these guys that, can swing a bat. And even if they're just going to be rotational guys, like, whatever, bring them in, do something. You're right. Like, the two guys they have signed, hey, they improve your defense. Great. IKF, is that, the acronym that we're going with?
That's what I'm going with.
Yeah. I mean, he's regarded as one of the best utility men in the game. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, those guys are very valuable. So, I mean, people who were, sleeping on that signing, I think that's pretty good value for what they, for what they ended up paying. So, you're right. Like, Chapman, what's going on with him? Do you sacrifice, do you sacrifice what he lacks at the plate for what he gives you in the field? Sure. Is he a right-handed bat when you need to fill your lineup with lefties? Sure. But what's better, right? Like, do you make Biggio an everyday guy again? Move him to third? Does Espinal take over that role? Do you ultimately, put Davis Schneider as an everyday player, who, again, came out of nowhere and was ultimately probably the best story of the season last year? So who knows? Like, Toronto's got a lot of things that they need to work on. And the fact that they've kind of reshuffled their coaching staff to take away and give some responsibilities to certain people, I mean, I think that was needed as well. So I don't know. Here's hoping that brighter days are ahead for Blue Jays and their fan base. But yeah, with the way things are going, it doesn't look like it's going to be too eventful. So it's kicking into high gear here, boys.
Yeah. We go from the highs of, Christine Sinclair retirement, SGA, to, all right, well, Toronto, buckle up. I don't think much is going to happen here. Temper your expectation.
And Bo at the deadline because they're not going to get anything back. And yeah, anyways, no, it's like I said, I think the Blue Jays, they're in a unique spot. Obviously, they've been competing for the playoffs without, any success, but, they've been competing for the playoffs the last few years. But again, if Guerrero and Bichette can both have those types of seasons like Bo's last year and Guerrero's the year before, if they can combine those, you've got your two superstars.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just have to supplement those, those guys and insulate them with people who are going to protect them. And again, have timely hitting, which has eluded them the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
if they can go out there and get Bellinger, great. If they can go out there and sign another big name arm, fantastic. But I think we kind of need to temper some of the expectations from the Blake Snells or the Bellingers to, you know what? It's probably going to end up being, or Elvis Martinez gets called up from the minors and sees a lot of, reps at either shortstop or third base. And, maybe it's sort of like a Rice Hoskins signing, got injured and Philly's not going to re-sign him. And maybe you put him in at DH, like he's got some power there. Like, I think that's how Blue Jays fans need to kind of start reframing this offseason is you're close. And at a certain point, you just got to go for the green right now there to cap this off for one final Seinfeld comment. But I don't see them going and landing another big name free agent. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see any of the marquee names ultimately putting pen to paper to come up north, and they kind of just reset and retool for next offseason, which will have a stronger free agent class than what we saw this year.
Yeah, and I mean, you could get one of these guys on a 1 or 2 year deal, and I mean that's not the end of the world. I mean that's what you have those options to do, right?
Yeah.
So if you can get a Jock Peterson, Cody Bellinger to say, look what they did with Marcus Semien.
Yeah,
brought him in for a year. What did he do there? Had a career year, had a huge contract for Texas, right? And now, again, he World Series champ. So.
So you're welcome, Marcus.
You're welcome, Marcus. But that's the type of thing that you have to look at. Like, if we can, if Toronto can make a move and get a guy who is looking for a huge payday, but no one's really ready to give him one yet, hey, let's bring you in. Your market value dictates that we're going to pay you 17, 18 million bucks, right? It's not like you're going to, go hungry off that. So you have an incentive-laden deal. You hit all your bonuses, and then at the end of the year, if you like it here, you can re-sign for a larger contract with more term, or someone's going to come in and say, "Hey, we'll give you the 7-year deal that we were, that we didn't want to give you last year because you showed us that you could do it consistently year after year." So, anyways, we'll see what happens, but from Sinclair to the PWHL to the RJ Barrett trade to the state of the Raptors to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and where we are with the Blue Jays. I mean, I think that was a pretty successful first inaugural episode of 1867 here, pal.